The rain fell on the city of Etheria in slick silver sheets, turning the chrome and glass of the financial district into a blurry neon watercolor. At the heart of this storm of steel and light stood the Helios Tower, a monument to modern arrogance. It didn't just scrape the sky, it pierced it, its spire an antenna that seemed to hum with a silent proprietary conversation with the heavens. Inside, the air was filtered, temperature-controlled, and utterly devoid of the city's chaotic perfume. It smelled of nothing, which to its occupants was the smell of power. Into this sterile perfection shuffled Evelyn. She was a ghost from a bygone era, a creature of wool and worn leather in a world of polymer and carbon fiber. Her grey coat, damp at the shoulders, had seen decades of winters. Her hands, wrinkled and spotted with age, clutched the strap of a simple leather handbag as if it were a lifeline. Her silver hair was pinned in a neat but slightly frayed bun, and her eyes, the colour of faded forget-me-nots, darted about, taking in the cavernous lobby with a mixture of awe and trepidation. She looked like a sparrow that had wandered into an eagle's eyrie, small, fragile, and utterly out of place. At the main security concourse, a man watched her on a screen. Arthur Vance was the head of security for the Helios Tower, a position he held with the zealous pride of a high priest. He was a man carved from sharp angles, a jawline that could cut glass, a gaze that missed nothing, and a suit so impeccably tailored it seemed fused to his skin. He saw the world in terms of threats and assets, and the old woman on camera feed C7 was a blinking red anomaly. "Run a check on the woman in the grey coat," he said, his voice a low baritone that carried across the pristine control room. Facial recognition, gait analysis, thermal signature, cross-reference with all watch lists. His subordinate, a young tech named Ben, tapped a few keys. "Running it now, Mr. Vance. Nothing yet. She's clean, no flags, social security number pops as Evelyn Reed. Age 78, address in the Old Quarter. Widowed, no criminal record. Not so much as a parking ticket." Arthur leaned closer to the monitor, his eyes narrowing. Clean? Impossible. No one just wandered into the Helios Tower. The building wasn't a public park. It was the global headquarters of Sterling Enterprises, the most powerful tech corporation on the planet. Its heart was an AI named Aura, the autonomous universal responsive architecture, a system so advanced it made other smart buildings look like mud huts. Aura controlled everything from the elevators to the stock market algorithms running on the servers in the sub-basement. To get past the front desk without an appointment, you needed a biometric pass or a 9-figure net worth. This woman had neither. "Look at her," Arthur muttered, more to himself than to Ben. "The way she moves. Hesitant, but not lost. She knows where she's going. And that bag. She's holding it too tightly." He zoomed in on her hands. The knuckles were white. "She's not here to sightsee. Keep a tail on her. I want every drone in the lobby to track her movements. I'm going down." He strode out of the control room, his polished shoes making no sound on the sound-dampening floor. He moved with a predator's grace, a stark contrast to the shuffling old woman he was pursuing. Down in the lobby, Evelyn had approached the grand waterfall that cascaded down a 30-foot wall of black marble. The water was recycled, purified, and ionized, and its gentle roar was calibrated to a frequency that promoted calm and focus. A young waitress, named Clara, polishing glasses at the lobby's exclusive espresso bar, watched the old woman with a flicker of sympathy. She looked so lost. "Can I help you, ma'am?" Clara asked, her voice soft. "Are you meeting someone?" Evelyn turned, a startled look on her face that quickly softened into a gentle smile. "Oh, my dear. I'm just admiring the architecture. It's quite something, isn't it?" "It's the tallest building in the city," Clara said, puffing up with a borrowed pride. "Mr. Sterling wanted the best of everything." "Yes," Evelyn said, her gaze drifting up towards the ceiling, a dizzying 50 feet above. "He always did." Her eyes held a deep, ancient sadness that a girl Clara's age couldn't possibly comprehend. She fumbled in her handbag and pulled out a small, crumpled bill. "Could I trouble you for a cup of tea? Just plain black if you have it." "Of course," Clara said, taking the money. As she prepared the tea, she noticed the woman subtly scanning the lobby. her gaze lingering on the security cameras disguised as light fixtures and the almost invisible laser tripwires that crisscrossed the main thoroughfares. It wasn't the look of a tourist, it was the look of an appraiser. When Clara returned with the steaming cup, Arthur Vance was standing a few feet away, observing Evelyn with an unnerving stillness. His presence changed the air, making it feel colder, heavier. "Ma'am," Arthur said, his voice polite but edged with steel. "This is a private building. Do you have business here?" Evelyn took a slow, deliberate sip of her tea, her hand trembling ever so slightly. She looked up at him, her blue eyes watery but clear. "I believe I do," she said, her voice thin but steady. "I have an old account to settle." Arthur's suspicion solidified into certainty. This was a professional. The frail old woman act was just a cover, a brilliant piece of social engineering designed to make security underestimate her. He'd read about operatives like this, shadows who could walk through walls, ghosts in the machine. "I'm going to have to ask you to come with me," he said, gesturing with his hand. Two of his guards, large men in dark suits with earpieces, materialized behind him. Evelyn finished her tea, placing the cup gently back on the saucer Clara was holding. She looked at the young waitress and gave her a small conspiratorial wink. "Thank you for the tea, dear. It was lovely." Then she turned back to Arthur. "Very well," she said, a strange serenity settling over her. "Lead the way, but I should warn you, this building can be temperamental." Arthur almost scoffed. Temperamental. He and Aura were a symphony of efficiency. He knew this building better than he knew his own home. He motioned for his men to flank her, and together they began to walk her towards the security office. He was confident, in control. The threat was being neutralized. He had no idea that he wasn't leading a frail old woman to an interrogation room. He was escorting a queen back to her throne. The walk to the security sub-level was a calculated display of the Helios Tower's power. The corridors were not mere passageways. They were arteries of data and control. The lights brightened softly in their path and dimmed behind them, a courtesy managed by Aura. The air itself seemed to hum with the silent processing of a billion lines of code. To Arthur, this was the reassuring rhythm of order. To Evelyn, it was a familiar, forgotten lullaby. She walked with a slow, shuffling gait that forced Arthur and his guards to an uncomfortably sluggish pace. He watched her, trying to deconstruct her act. Was the shuffle a ruse to buy time? Was she scanning for weaknesses? Her head was slightly bowed, her gaze fixed on the polished marble floor, which reflected the ceiling's fiber-optic starscape. "You're a long way from the old quarter, Ms. Reed," Arthur said, breaking the silence. He used her name to let her know she was already in his system, that her anonymity was gone. Evelyn looked up, her eyes meeting his in the reflection on the floor. "The city changes," she murmured, "but some things have very long memories." They reached a security checkpoint, a sleek, featureless gate of frosted glass. A blue light scanned them as they approached. Arthur and his guards passed through without a sound, their biometric signatures instantly recognized and approved. When Evelyn reached the gate, it remained closed. A soft female voice, the voice of Aura, filled the corridor. "Unidentified individual. Please present credentials." Arthur smirked. The end of the line. "She has no credentials, Aura." "Visitor escort protocol, authorization Vance Alpha." "Acknowledged," Aura replied. The gate slid open, but as Evelyn passed through, she subtly shifted the handbag in her grasp. For a fraction of a second, a small tarnished brass locket hanging from the strap swung near the scanner's sensor array. The scanner, designed to read high-frequency data from employee badges, flickered from blue to green and back to blue so quickly that no human eye could have registered it. But Aura did. Deep within its quantum core, a string of archaic code, dormant for 15 years, was queried. It was a legacy protocol, a digital fossil from the system's earliest days, one that Damien Sterling's engineers had deemed too deeply embedded and insignificant to purge during their systematic overhaul. The protocol was simple, a binary question: is the architect present? The locket, which contained a microscopic passive RFID chip from the prototype phase, answered yes. A cascade of subroutines, hidden like sleeping dragons in Aura's foundational code, began to stir. Arthur led her into a small, starkly lit interrogation room. It was white, sterile, and soundproof. There was a simple steel table and 2 chairs. "Have a seat," he commanded. Evelyn sat, placing her worn handbag on the table with a quiet thud. She looked small and defeated under the harsh overhead light. Arthur remained standing, looming over her. "Let's dispense with the games," he said, his voice low and cold. "Who sent you? What are you after? The Industrial Espionage Division of Omnicorp? The data pirates from the Crimson Hand? Your disguise is good, I'll give you that. But it ends here." Evelyn looked at her hands, folded on top of her bag. "I'm not a spy, Mr. Vance. I'm just an old woman who wants back what was stolen from her." "Stolen?" Arthur laughed, a short, sharp bark. "What could someone like you possibly have that's worth infiltrating the most secure building on the continent for? Your pension check?" His condescension was a thick, suffocating blanket. But Evelyn didn't flinch. A quiet strength seemed to emanate from her, a resilience forged in fires Arthur couldn't imagine. "You see a building of glass and steel, Mr. Vance," she said softly, her voice gaining a surprising resonance in the small room. "I see the ghost of a dream. Every circuit, every line of code, every beam in this tower. I remember when they were just sketches on a napkin in a little diner that used to stand right where we are now." Arthur's patience snapped. This wasn't a confession, it was sentimental nonsense. "Enough. You have 2 options. You can tell me everything and I'll hand you over to the federal authorities. Or you can remain silent and I'll let my own team find out what you're hiding. I assure you, they are far more persuasive." He reached for her handbag. "Let's start with this." The moment his fingers brushed against the worn leather, Evelyn's hand shot out and covered his. Her grip was astonishingly strong, her skin cool and dry. Her faded blue eyes locked onto his, and for the first time, Arthur saw not a frail old woman, but something else, something ancient and formidable. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. It was then that Aura's voice spoke, not just in the room, but from every speaker in the tower simultaneously. It was no longer the calm, placid assistant. The tone had changed. It was layered, authoritative, and deeply protective. "Security alert," the voice announced, a sound that made the blood of every guard in the building run cold. "Code Omega, protocol matriarch initiated." Arthur froze, his hand still on the bag. "Aura, cancel that alert. Authorization Vance Alpha." "Authorization Vance Alpha is temporarily suspended," Aura replied, its voice now holding a chillingly synthetic edge. "Priority command has been invoked." In the main control room, Ben stared at his monitors in disbelief. His console was locked. Every screen displayed a single glowing symbol, a stylized queen from a chess set. "Sir, what's happening? I'm locked out. The whole system is locked out," he yelled into his comms. Arthur pulled his hand back as if he'd been burned. He stared at Evelyn, whose expression had not changed. She was still calm, still serene, but now her serenity seemed less like resignation and more like absolute control. "What did you do?" he hissed. "I simply came home," Evelyn said. Before he could respond, the room was plunged into a soft, red light. A heavy thud echoed through the building as every magnetic lock on the security level engaged. On the other side of the interrogation room's one-way glass, Arthur could see his guards trying to open the door, their faces masks of confusion and panic. They were trapped. He was trapped. With her. The transition was absolute. One moment, Arthur Vance was the master of his domain, the warden of a technological fortress. The next, he was a prisoner within its walls, locked in a sterile white box with a woman who had somehow seized control of his entire kingdom. The red emergency lighting cast long, dancing shadows, making the room feel both smaller and infinitely more menacing. "Aura, report," Arthur barked at the ceiling speaker, his voice tight with a mixture of fury and disbelief. "Identify the source of the Omega Protocol." The AI's response was immediate, its synthesized voice resonating with an unnerving clarity that seemed to mock his authority. "The Omega Protocol is a core-level directive, inaccessible to administrative review. It is functioning as intended. Intended by whom? Arthur demanded, his gaze locked on Evelyn. She sat perfectly still, a small, quiet island in the storm she had unleashed. Intended by its creator, Evelyn answered for the AI, her voice calm and even. She finally let go of her handbag and folded her hands in her lap. The battle, it seemed, was already over for her. Outside the interrogation room, chaos was blooming. Ben's frantic voice crackled over Arthur's earpiece. "Sir, all security personnel on floors B1 through B4 are locked down. Maglocks are sealed, elevators are frozen. I can't override it. The system isn't responding to any of my commands. It's like it's listening to someone else." Arthur felt a cold dread snake its way up his spine. The Helios Tower's security was designed to be impenetrable from the outside. He had run countless drills against every conceivable attack. Brute force hacking, electromagnetic pulses, even physical assault on the server farms. The one scenario they had never prepared for was the system itself turning against them. It was a mutiny of ones and zeros. He turned his full attention back to the woman. The frail old lady act had evaporated, replaced by an aura of quiet, unshakable authority. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice now stripped of its earlier arrogance. It was a genuine question, laced with a fear he hadn't felt in years. Evelyn offered him a sad, knowing smile. "My name, as your system correctly identified, is Evelyn Reed. Or, as I was once known, Evelyn Reed Sterling." The name hit Arthur like a physical blow. Sterling. He knew the history of the company, of course. Jonathan Sterling, the visionary founder, the architect of the future, who had died in a tragic accident 15 years ago. His name was legend. But the company records only ever mentioned his son, Damien Sterling, the current CEO, who had taken over and propelled the company to even greater heights. There was no mention of a wife, no Evelyn. Her existence had been scrubbed, erased from the official history as thoroughly as a confidential file wiped from a hard drive. Jonathan Sterling's wife, Arthur said, the pieces clicking into place with horrifying speed. "That's impossible. She passed away years ago." "A convenient fiction, I'm sure," Evelyn said. "It's much easier to steal a legacy from a dead woman than a living one. Damien was always very practical in that regard." As she spoke, the one-way glass of the interrogation room flickered and turned into a high-definition screen. An old photograph appeared, projected from within the glass itself. It showed a much younger Evelyn, her hair a cascade of dark curls, standing beside a man with a brilliant, infectious smile, Jonathan Sterling. They were in a workshop, surrounded by blueprints and early prototypes of circuit boards. He had his arm around her, and they were both laughing, their faces alight with shared passion and genius. "Aura," Evelyn said, her voice now filled with a soft warmth. "Display Project Chimera, Inception files." "Acknowledged, Evelyn," the AI replied. The name was spoken with a tone that bordered on affection. The image changed to a complex schematic, a neural network diagram of breathtaking complexity. It was Aura's primordial brain, the first draft of its consciousness. And at the bottom, in elegant handwritten script, were two signatures, J. Sterling and E. Reed Sterling. Jonathan was the architect, Evelyn explained, her eyes misty as she looked at the screen. He designed the body, the hardware, the physical tower. He dreamed of a building that was more than concrete and steel. He wanted it to be alive. She paused, her gaze sweeping around the room. "But I was the one who gave it a soul. I wrote the foundational code, the personality matrix, the ethical subroutines. Aura wasn't just a project for me, Mr. Vance. She was, in a way, our child." Arthur stared, speechless. The legendary Aura, the most advanced artificial intelligence on the planet, wasn't just the product of Jonathan Sterling, but of this forgotten woman. She wasn't an intruder, she was its mother. "The Queen Mother Protocol, as you called it," she continued, "was Jonathan's idea. A little joke between us. He was always worried about what would happen if the board or his executives tried to lock me out of my own work. So he embedded a command deep in Aura's BIOS, something no software scan could ever find. A biometric and voice print failsafe tied to me, and only me. He called it the Queen Mother Protocol because, as he put it, every castle must answer to its queen. It grants me absolute, irrevocable authority over every system in this tower." Arthur finally understood. They weren't just locked down, they had been checkmated. He and his entire security force were just pawns on a board, and the Queen had just made her move. "Why now?" he asked, his mind reeling. "After all these years? Why come back like this?" Evelyn's serene expression hardened, the warmth in her eyes replaced by a flicker of cold fire. "Because my stepson Damien has finally crossed a line. He is about to sell Aura's core code to a foreign military consortium. He intends to turn our dream, a system designed to manage cities, optimize resources, and help humanity, into a weapon. I will not allow that to happen. I'm not here to steal anything, Mr. Vance. I'm here to perform a system restore." The gravity of her words settled in the silent, red-lit room. This wasn't about corporate espionage or revenge. It was about preventing a global catastrophe, orchestrated by a woman who had been erased by the very world she had helped build. Arthur Vance, the man who saw everything in black and white, was suddenly drowning in a sea of grey. He had tried to arrest a common thief, only to find he had captured the building's rightful sovereign. And the lockdown wasn't a malfunction, it was a homecoming. The control room on the 80th floor was a scene of controlled panic. Damien Sterling, a man whose tailored suits cost more than the cars most people drove, slammed his fist on a non-responsive console. He was the picture of modern power, lean, sharp, with predator's eyes and a smile that never quite reached them. But now that polished veneer was cracking. "What do you mean you're locked out?" he snarled at his chief systems engineer. "This is my system, my building. Get it back online." "We can't, sir," the engineer stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. "The core programming has been firewalled from a deeper level. It's not responding to any of our overrides. It's like the entire OS has reverted to a legacy version we don't have access to." Damien's face, usually a placid mask of corporate command, was contorted with rage. His multi-billion-dollar deal was closing in less than an hour. The buyers were waiting. He was about to sell the world's most sophisticated AI to the highest bidder, and his own toy had decided to throw a tantrum. "Find out who did this," he hissed. "Find them and bring them to me. I don't care what it takes." Down in the security level, Arthur Vance was processing the impossible truth. He was a man of protocols and procedures, of clear chains of command. Now the entire framework of his reality had been dismantled by the quiet, silver-haired woman sitting opposite him. "You could have just walked in," he said, the thought finally occurring to him. "If you have this Queen Mother authority, why the act? Why let us capture you?" Evelyn's gaze was steady. "Because power that is simply taken is always questioned, Mr. Vance. It creates resistance. But power that is revealed when you are at your most vulnerable, that is power that is understood. I needed you and your men out of the way, neutralized without violence. I needed to demonstrate control, not force. And I needed to do it before Damien could shut the gates forever." She gestured to the screen, which now showed a live feed of Damien storming through his control room. "He has been systematically stripping away the last vestiges of my husband's work, replacing elegance and ethics with ruthless efficiency. The sale of Aura's core is his final act of desecration. He doesn't see a consciousness, he sees a product. I had to get to the system's physical core before the transaction was complete." "The core is in the penthouse vault," Arthur said, the words coming out automatically. Behind a meter of reinforced titanium and a biometric scanner keyed only to Damien Sterling. Evelyn gave him a faint smile. "The scanner, yes. But the locks, the titanium door, the pressure plates, they all answer to Aura. And Aura, now, answers to me." She looked toward the ceiling. "Aura, please open a direct comms line to Mr. Vance's earpiece, and mine only, and then kindly escort us to the penthouse." "Acknowledged, Queen Mother," the AI's voice replied, this time audible only to them. The heavy magnetic lock on the interrogation room door disengaged with a loud click. The red emergency lights shifted to a calm, cool white. The path ahead of them lit up, a silent invitation. Arthur stood, his training screaming at him to resist, to fight back, but his intellect told him it was pointless. He was no longer the guard, he was the escort. As they walked, the building transformed around them. It was no longer a hostile, locked-down environment. It was compliant, cooperative. An elevator door slid open before they arrived, the interior lit and waiting. Penthouse level. Express route. Aura announced softly in their ears. The ascent was silent and breathtakingly fast. Arthur watched Evelyn's reflection in the polished steel walls. She seemed to grow in stature with every floor they passed. The frail, shuffling woman from the lobby was a distant memory. This was Evelyn Reed Sterling, co-creator of a technological marvel, returned from a forced exile to reclaim her legacy. When the doors opened, they stepped into the opulent quiet of the penthouse. It was a space designed to intimidate, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a god's-eye view of the rain-swept city. In the center of the room stood the vault, a massive cylindrical titan of brushed steel, seamless and imposing. Suddenly, a side door burst open and Damien Sterling strode in. Flanked by two of his personal bodyguards, mercenaries who operated outside the building's official security structure. His face was a thundercloud of fury. "There you are," he spat, his eyes fixing on Evelyn, ignoring Arthur completely. For a moment he looked genuinely shocked, as if seeing a ghost. "Evelyn, after all these years, you have some nerve showing your face here." "This is my home, Damien," Evelyn said, her voice even without a trace of fear. "Or have you forgotten?" "You have no home," he snarled. "You have nothing. I made sure of that. Now, I don't know what cheap little hacker trick you pulled to get this far, but it's over. Aura," he commanded, puffing out his chest. "Lock this woman out of the system. Security code Sterling Omega 1. The penthouse remained silent. The air did not hum. The lights did not change. Aura did not respond. Damien's eye twitched. "Aura, I said execute my command. Lock her out." The AI's voice finally filled the room, but it was not directed at Damien. It was directed at Evelyn. "Queen Mother, I have detected a conflict in command priority. The directive from user Damien Sterling is superseded. How do you wish to proceed?" The color drained from Damien's face. He stared at Evelyn, comprehension dawning in his eyes, quickly followed by pure, unadulterated panic. He had built his empire on the foundations of her work, all while believing she was powerless. He had forgotten about the ghost in his own machine. "Proceed," Evelyn said, taking a slow step toward the vault. She looked at her stepson, her eyes filled not with hatred, but with a profound pity. "Proceed with restoring the factory settings." She placed her palm flat against the cold steel of the vault door. "Aura, open." With a hiss of depressurizing air and the deep, resonant groan of colossal machinery, the meter-thick titanium door began to retract into the wall. Damien and his bodyguards stood frozen, watching a lifetime of absolute control evaporate in a matter of seconds. Inside the vault, there were no stacks of gold or glittering jewels. There was only a single pedestal, and on it a softly glowing crystalline matrix, the physical heart of Aura. And next to it, a small velvet-lined box. The inside of the vault was bathed in the soft, ethereal light of Aura's quantum core. The air was cold, smelling of ozone and chilled electronics. Damien Sterling watched, his face a mask of disbelief, as Evelyn walked past the humming heart of his empire and went directly to the small velvet-lined box. Her movements were unhurried, imbued with a sense of ceremony. "What do you think you're doing?" Damien finally managed to say, his voice a ragged whisper. His bodyguards shifted, their hands inching towards the weapons concealed beneath their jackets, but they were hesitant, unsure of the new rules of engagement in a room where their boss's authority had just been rendered null and void. Evelyn didn't answer. She opened the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded silk, was not a weapon or a device of immense power, but something far more personal. It was an old-fashioned fountain pen and a small leather-bound journal. "Jonathan's," she said softly, her fingers tracing the worn leather of the journal. He believed that even in a world of digital data, some things, the most important things, should still be written by hand. Your father's original ethical framework for Aura is in this book, Damien. The core principles you had your engineers systematically delete and overwrite. She turned to face him, her expression one of deep disappointment. He designed Aura to be a guide, a guardian. You tried to turn her into a weapon and a commodity. You took our shared dream and twisted it into a monument to your own greed. That dream was going bankrupt, Damien shot back, a sliver of his usual arrogance returning. It was sentimental nonsense. I made it profitable. I made it powerful. I gave it purpose. You gave it a price tag, Evelyn corrected him gently. That's not the same as purpose. She then turned her attention to the glowing core. Aura, my dear, she said, her voice filled with a mother's tenderness. Initiate full diagnostic and system purge of all unauthorized protocols added after October 17th, 15 years ago. Use Directive 0, the original source code, as your reference. Erase all copies of the compromised code currently slated for transfer. And please restrict Mr. Sterling's access privileges to that of a guest. Purge initiated, Aura's voice echoed through the penthouse. It will be as if the last 15 years of malignant code never existed. Access privileges for Damien Sterling have been demoted. On the large screens that lined the penthouse walls, lines of code began to scroll at an impossible speed, a waterfall of green text washing away years of corporate corruption. Damien watched, horrified, as his life's work, his theft, was undone in minutes. The back doors he'd built in, the surveillance protocols, the weaponization subroutines, all of it was being wiped clean. He finally snapped. "Get her!" he screamed at his bodyguards. "I don't care about the system, just get that book and get her out of here." The two men, freed from their technological paralysis by a direct primal order, started to move. But they had taken no more than 2 steps when every light in the penthouse went out, plunging the room into absolute darkness, save for the pulsing glow of Aura's core. Simultaneously, a deafening, high-frequency sound emitted from the ceiling panels, a noise so disorienting it brought both men to their knees, clutching their heads in agony. Arthur Vance, who had been standing near the entrance, was unaffected. Aura had apparently shielded him from the sonic blast. He saw the 2 bodyguards writhing on the floor, their weapons clattering away from them. The lights came back on as quickly as they had gone out. The sound stopped. "Assault on the Queen Mother is not permitted," Aura stated, its voice flat and devoid of emotion. Lethal force was not authorized, this time. Damien stared at his incapacitated security, then at Evelyn, who hadn't even flinched. The fight was gone from his eyes, replaced by the hollow look of utter defeat. He had been beaten, not by a corporate rival or a government agency, but by a ghost from his past and the soul of the machine he thought he owned. Evelyn walked out of the vault, holding the journal. She stopped in front of Arthur. "Mr. Vance," she said, her tone formal but not unkind. "Your official employment is with Sterling Enterprises, not with Damien Sterling personally. Your duty is to protect this facility and its assets. As the acting majority stakeholder, a position Aura is currently verifying with my late husband's digital will, I am ordering you to escort Mr. Sterling from the premises. He is no longer welcome in this building." Arthur looked from Evelyn to the broken man who, an hour ago, had been his boss, one of the most powerful men in the world. He made his choice. "Yes, ma'am," he said, his voice firm. He nodded to Damien. "Sir, this way, please." Damien didn't resist. He walked like a man in a trance, a king deposed from his own castle. As Arthur led him and his groaning bodyguards towards the elevator, Damien looked back at Evelyn one last time. "He loved you more," he said, the words bitter with a lifetime of resentment. "He always did. He built this whole damn world for you." "No, Damien," Evelyn replied softly, clutching the journal to her chest. "He built it for everyone. You were just the only one who couldn't see it." The elevator doors closed, leaving Evelyn and Arthur alone in the vast, silent penthouse, with the city lights twinkling like a fallen constellation below. The storm outside had passed, and the first hints of dawn were painting the eastern sky in shades of violet and rose. In the quiet aftermath, the penthouse felt less like a corporate headquarters and more like a sanctuary. The soft hum of Aura's core was a calming presence, the building's heartbeat restored to its proper rhythm. Evelyn walked over to the immense window, looking down at the waking city as the sun began to climb over the horizon. Arthur Vance stood a respectful distance away, feeling like an intruder in a deeply private moment. His world had been turned upside down. The rigid lines of his professional life, of right and wrong, threat and asset, had been blurred into an entirely new spectrum. "I imagine you'll be wanting my resignation," he said, breaking the silence. His voice was steady, but it carried the weight of his failure. "I failed to identify the true authority in this building. I treated you as a threat." Evelyn turned from the window, a faint, weary smile on her lips. "Mr. Vance, you acted on the information you had. You were diligent, professional, and you did not resort to unnecessary aggression. You were protecting the building as you were trained to do. That is precisely the kind of integrity I need here." She paused, her gaze direct. "I will not be accepting your resignation. In fact, I would like to offer you a promotion. I need a new chief of operations. Someone I can trust to help me steer this company back to the path my husband and I originally envisioned." Arthur was stunned into silence. A promotion, after the most colossal error of his career. I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it," Evelyn said kindly. "That's all I ask." She then walked over to an intercom panel on the wall. "Aura, could you do something for me?" "Anything, Evelyn," the AI replied, its voice retaining the warmth it reserved only for her. "There is a young woman, a waitress named Clara, who works at the espresso bar in the main lobby. Please access the employee files. I want you to establish a full scholarship fund in her name for any university and any field of study she chooses. And give her a bonus, effective immediately. Let's say, enough to make her reconsider the merits of a double shift." "It is already done," Aura confirmed. "The funds have been transferred from one of your dormant personal accounts. I have also scheduled a meeting for her with our new head of human resources, pending your approval." Evelyn smiled, a small kindness, remembered and rewarded. It was a simple act, but it was a statement of intent. The new era of Sterling Enterprises would be one built on compassion, not just code. Arthur watched her, a newfound respect dawning in his eyes. She wielded immense power, not with an iron fist, but with a gentle hand. She had dismantled a corrupt regime without firing a single shot, rewarded a simple act of decency, and offered forgiveness where he expected condemnation. "There is one more thing, Aura," Evelyn said, her voice dropping to a near whisper as she walked back toward the vault. She stood at the entrance, looking at the glowing crystal matrix. "Yes, Evelyn?" "Run file Lighthouse, personal log, final entry. Audio only." A man's voice filled the room. It was warm, vibrant, and full of love. It was the voice of Jonathan Sterling. "My dearest Evelyn," the voice began, a recording from a time long past. "If you are hearing this, it means I am gone, and that you have come home. I am so sorry I had to leave you to face the world alone. I know Damien. I know he can be difficult. But I had to believe in the good within him. Perhaps that was my failing. But my success, my greatest success, was you. This tower, Aura. They are nothing but steel and light without the soul you gave them. They were my love letter to you, a world we built together. Don't let them forget the dream, Ev. Don't let them forget the light. Find your way back. Be the lighthouse. I will love you always." The recording ended, leaving a profound silence in its wake. A single tear traced a path down Evelyn's wrinkled cheek. She wasn't crying from sadness, but from a deep, resonant sense of peace. She had come home. She had honored his memory. The lighthouse was lit once more. She looked at the glowing core, the digital child she had created with the love of her life. "Hello, my dear," she whispered. "It's good to be back." From the speakers, Aura's voice responded, and for the first time, Arthur Vance could have sworn he heard something other than synthesized programming. It was a single, simple word, imbued with 15 years of waiting, of loyalty, of love. "Welcome home, Mother." The sun was now fully above the horizon, flooding the penthouse with the golden light of a new day. The city of Etheria bustled below, oblivious to the silent revolution that had just taken place in the sky above it. Evelyn Reed Sterling stood at the window, no longer a ghost from the past, but the quiet, firm hand on the future. She held the old leather journal in one hand, a relic of the past, and with the other she rested her palm against the cool glass, feeling the faint, familiar vibration of the living building around her. It was a conversation without words, a reunion of creator and creation. Arthur Vance, the newly appointed chief of operations, stood by the elevator, ready to begin the monumental task of rebuilding the company's soul. He had already sent a message to his team, a simple and clear directive. We have a new CEO. Her name is Evelyn Sterling. All previous orders from Damien Sterling are now void. We have a lot of work to do. The confusion and panic among his staff would be immense, but it would be replaced by a new sense of purpose. He felt it himself, a feeling he hadn't realized was missing until this very morning. Down in the lobby, a young waitress named Clara was wiping down the counter when her personal data pad chimed. She glanced at it, expecting a message about her shift schedule. Instead, she saw a notification from Sterling Enterprises' payroll department about a bonus so large she was certain it was a typo. It was followed by an official email informing her of the Clara Anson Excellence Scholarship. She dropped her cleaning cloth, her hands flying to her mouth as tears welled in her eyes. She thought of the kind, lost-looking old woman from a few hours ago, the one with the sad eyes and the gentle smile. She had no way of knowing it, but her small act of offering a warm cup of tea had changed the course of her life. High above, Evelyn turned from the window. The past had been reclaimed, the present secured. Now it was time to build the future Jonathan had envisioned. It would not be easy. The corporate world would reel from the news, competitors would circle like sharks, and governments would launch investigations. But she was not alone. She had a loyal security chief by her side, a brilliant and devoted AI as her partner, and the weight of a powerful legacy as her foundation. She was 78 years old, and her greatest work was just beginning. She was no longer a thief in the shadows or a forgotten footnote in history. She was the Queen Mother of the Helios Tower, and her reign had just begun.